The morning sunlight streamed through my kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the pancakes I had been carefully preparing since dawn. At 67, I still found joy in cooking Sunday breakfast for my son Nathan. It had become our little tradition since Michael passed away 3 years ago. "Nathan, breakfast is ready," I called out, arranging the blueberry pancakes on his favorite blue plate, the one he'd used since he was a boy. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and comment the city you're watching from. I heard his heavy footsteps before I saw him, unshaven and bleary-eyed at 42. He mumbled something that might have been morning before slumping into his chair. "Did you sleep well?" I asked, placing a cup of coffee in front of him, black, 2 sugars, just how he liked it. Nathan grunted, scrolling through his phone, barely glancing at the food I'd spent an hour preparing. I sat across from him, watching as he stabbed at the pancakes. "I made those blueberry ones you always loved," I said, trying to fill the silence. "They're fine," he muttered, still not looking up. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my tea. This coldness wasn't new, but it still hurt every time. I took a deep breath. "Nathan, I wanted to talk to you about the property taxes on your condo. They've gone up again and I—" "Here we go," he interrupted, finally looking up with irritation flashing in his eyes. "Another lecture about money." "It's not a lecture," I said softly. "I just think we need to talk about how I'm such a disappointment. About how Dad would have handled things better." His voice rose with each word. "That's not what I meant at all. I just think. You just think I need to be more responsible," he mocked. "You think I don't know that? You think I enjoy having my mother pay my bills at my age?" I flinched. "Nathan, please. I'm just trying to help." "Help?" He laughed bitterly. "If you wanted to help, you'd stop reminding me what a failure I am." "I've never said that," I whispered, feeling my chest tighten. "I would never." "You don't have to say it." He slammed his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. "It's in every disapproving look, every sigh, every time you mention Dad." "Nathan, that's not fair." Life isn't fair, Mom," he snapped. "You know what's not fair? That Dad's gone and you're still here." The room went silent. I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock, the distant sound of a lawnmower outside. My hands had stopped trembling. They were perfectly still now, along with my heart. "What did you say?" My voice was barely audible. Nathan's eyes held mine, cold and unflinching. "You heard me. You should have died instead of him. Or better yet, you should have died with him." The words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back, impossible to unhear. 3 years of grieving together, of trying to rebuild our lives without Michael, and this is what he truly felt. I stood up slowly, my legs somehow supporting me despite feeling like they might shatter. Without a word, I walked to my purse on the counter, removed a folder, and returned to the table. I placed it down between us, next to his half-eaten pancakes. "What's this?" Nathan asked, his tone still harsh but with a flicker of uncertainty. "The deed to your condo," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "The one I bought for you 5 years ago. The one that's still in my name. The one whose property taxes I've been paying, along with the maintenance fees and the utilities when you couldn't make ends meet." I pushed back my chair and picked up my purse. "Mom," Nathan said, his voice suddenly changing. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," I interrupted, surprising us both. "And that's okay. At least now I know exactly where we stand." I walked to the door, turned the handle and paused without looking back. "I've spent the last 20 years trying to fill the holes in your life, Nathan. But I can't fill the hole in your heart. Not anymore." The door closed behind me with a soft click that somehow echoed louder than any slam could have. In my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, I finally allowed the tears to come. Not just for today's pain, but for years of wounds I'd ignored, excused, and buried. How had we come to this? When had my sweet little boy turned into this bitter man who could hurt me so deliberately? And how had I allowed it to happen? As I drove away from Nathan's house, rain began to fall, mirroring the tears streaming down my face. But beneath the grief, I felt something unexpected taking root, something that felt strangely like relief. I drove aimlessly for hours, the rain eventually giving way to a pale afternoon sun. My hands had stopped shaking, but the ache in my chest remained. a dull, persistent throb that had become all too familiar over the years. I found myself parked outside the cemetery where Michael was buried. We had been married for 38 years when cancer took him. Not perfect years, no marriages, but good years built on respect and partnership. Michael had been my anchor, my compass. Without him, I had poured everything into being there for Nathan. I tried, Michael. I whispered to the empty car. I really tried. Memories washed over me like the earlier rain. Nathan at 7, gap-toothed and beaming as he showed off his science project. Nathan at 16, sullen but still reachable. Nathan at 25, briefly successful before the first of many temporary setbacks. Then came the darker memories. The ones I'd pushed aside, excused, rationalized. Nathan at 30, screaming that I was controlling when I suggested he seek help for his drinking. Nathan at 35, grudgingly accepting the down payment for his condo, then complaining it wasn't in a better neighborhood. Nathan at 38, meeting Mia, who looked at me from the start like I was competition rather than family. I remembered how I'd sold my mother's antique jewelry collection to help pay for Nathan's gambling debts after Mia encouraged him to invest in online poker. How I'd postponed my knee surgery to cover their security deposit when they were evicted from their previous apartment. How I'd endured Mia's thinly veiled insults at every family gathering, always biting my tongue for Nathan's sake. "Mrs. Harrison?" A soft tap on my window startled me. It was Tom, the groundskeeper. "Are you all right?" I nodded, embarrassed to be caught crying in my car. "Just visiting Michael." His kind eyes crinkled with understanding. "Would you like me to walk with you to his grave? It's getting late." I glanced at the dashboard clock, 5:37 p.m. I'd been sitting there for almost 2 hours. "No, thank you. I think I'll come back another day." As I drove away, my phone chimed with incoming messages. Nathan already. 6 missed calls and a dozen texts, ranging from angry, "Thanks for the dramatic exit," to manipulative, "I guess I'll always be a disappointment to you," to falsely I switched off my phone. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the compulsive need to respond immediately, to smooth things over, to make it right. Instead, I drove to the one place I knew I could find sanctuary, Eleanor's house. My oldest friend had warned me about Nathan's behavior for years, concerns I'd dismissed as her not understanding how sensitive he is. Eleanor opened her door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a fierce hug. "He finally showed his true colors, didn't he?" she asked softly. I nodded against her shoulder, unable to speak. "Come in. I just made tea." Seated in Eleanor's cozy living room, the story spilled out of me. Not just today's cruel words, but all of it. The financial drain. The emotional manipulation. The way Nathan and Mia had isolated me from friends and family, always with some urgent need that required my full attention whenever I made plans of my own. "He said I should have died instead of Michael," I finally admitted, the words burning my throat. Eleanor didn't look shocked. She didn't rush to defend Nathan or suggest I'd misunderstood. She simply reached across and squeezed my hand. "Barbara, how much have you given that boy over the years?" I shrugged. I never kept track. Ballpark figure. I thought about it, the condo, the car loans, the credit card debts, the temporary financial assistance that somehow became permanent. "Probably close to $500,000, I admitted, the number shocking me as I said it aloud. Eleanor nodded. "And what has he given you in return?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable because the answer was too painful. "He's my son," I said finally, as if that explained everything. "Yes, he is," Eleanor agreed. "But that doesn't give him the right to abuse you." Abuse. The word landed like a physical blow. I had never thought of it that way. Mothers sacrifice for their children, that's what we do. But when does sacrifice become self-destruction? "When Michael died," I said slowly, "Nathan became my whole world. I thought if I just loved him enough, gave him enough. You could fix him," Eleanor finished. "But some things can't be fixed by a mother's love, especially when that love is being exploited." My phone buzzed again in my purse. I knew without looking it would be Nathan, escalating his tactics now that I wasn't responding. "You can stay here as long as you need," Eleanor said, following my gaze to my purse. "The guest room is all yours." That night, as I lay in Eleanor's spare bedroom listening to the distant sounds of traffic, I thought about all the dreams I'd set aside. The painting classes I'd quit when Nathan needed me to babysit during his brief reconciliation with Mia after their first separation. The trip to Italy canceled when he lost another job. The book club I'd stopped attending because the meetings conflicted with the days Nathan typically dropped by needing something. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, what would my life look like if I started putting myself first? The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. The morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains as I woke in Eleanor's guest room. For a moment, I couldn't remember why I wasn't in my own bed. And then it all came flooding back. Nathan's cruel words, my quiet exit, the hours spent crying in Eleanor's living room. "You're up," Eleanor said, appearing in the doorway with a cup of coffee. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," I admitted, taking the steaming mug gratefully. It was true. Despite everything, I had slept deeply, without the usual 3 a.m. anxiety that had become my companion over the past few years. "I made an appointment for you," Eleanor said casually, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Appointment?" "With Dr. Levine. She's a therapist who specializes in family dynamics and—" "I don't need therapy," I interrupted, the defensive response automatic. Eleanor gave me a look that brooked no argument. "Barbara Harrison, I've watched you pour your entire life into that boy for decades. I've watched you make excuses for him, bend over backward for him, deplete your retirement savings for him. And yesterday, he told you he wished you were dead." Her voice softened. "If ever someone needed a professional perspective, it's you, my friend." I stared into my coffee, unable to meet her eyes. What would I even say? "Hi, I'm Barbara, and I've spent the last 20 years enabling my adult son?" How about "Hi, I'm Barbara, and I'm learning to prioritize myself for the first time in decades"? There was something in her tone, not pity but a deep, unwavering belief in me that I hadn't felt in years. "When's the appointment?" I finally asked. 11 o'clock. Dr. Levine's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, with wide windows that let in natural light. The therapist herself was a woman around my age, with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that missed nothing. "Eleanor mentioned your situation briefly," she said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. "But I'd like to hear it from you, Barbara." So I told her. About Michael's death. About how Nathan had slowly become more demanding, more entitled. About the money, the emotional manipulation, the way he and Mia had systematically isolated me from friends and family. And finally about yesterday's breaking point. Dr. Levine listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she set her notepad aside. "What you're describing is a classic pattern of emotional and financial abuse," she said directly. I flinched at the word abuse again. "But he's my son." "Yes, he is," she agreed. "And that makes the dynamic even more complicated. But it doesn't change the fundamental pattern." She explained how grief can sometimes exacerbate unhealthy relationships, how my need to still be needed after Michael's death had created the perfect environment for Nathan's manipulative behavior to flourish. "Do you know what codependency is, Barbara?" I shook my head. "It's when someone puts another person's needs consistently above their own to the point of self-neglect. Often, the codependent person derives their sense of purpose and worth from being needed, while the other person becomes increasingly dependent and demanding." The description fit so perfectly that I felt a chill run down my spine. "So this is my fault?" I asked quietly. "It's not about fault," Dr. Levine said firmly. "It's about patterns that have developed over time. Patterns that can be recognized and changed." By the end of the session, I had homework to write down every financial contribution I'd made to Nathan in the past 5 years, to start a journal of my feelings, and to not respond to Nathan for at least a week. "He's going to escalate before he backs down," Dr. Levine warned. "When people are used to controlling others, they don't give that up easily." She was right. By the time I returned to Eleanor's house, Nathan had called 17 more times. My voicemail was full of messages that ranged from tearful apologies to thinly veiled threats. "Mom, please call me back. I'm worried about you. I can't believe you're punishing me like this." I said I was sorry. "If you don't call me back, I'll come to Eleanor's. I know that's where you are." That last one sent a shock through me. I played it for Eleanor. "He's bluffing," she said confidently. "He doesn't know where I live." But the seed of doubt had been planted. How much of my life was truly private from Nathan? How many boundaries had I failed to establish over the years? That evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, Barbara? It's Mia. My son's wife's voice was honey-sweet, a tone I recognized from previous manipulations. Nathan is absolutely beside himself, she said. He barely slept last night. You know how he gets when he's upset. He says things he doesn't mean. Like wishing I was dead? I asked flatly. There was a pause. He was having a bad day. We all say things. No, Mia. We don't all say things like that. Another pause. Well, regardless, he's very sorry and he needs you. We need you. The property taxes are due and… I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. Eleanor found me sitting in the garden, staring at nothing. Mia called, I said. Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. Let me guess. Nathan is very sorry and also they need money. A laugh escaped me, surprising us both. You know, when you put it that way, it sounds so transparent. It is transparent, Barbara. To everyone but you. She was right. For years, I had chosen not to see what was right in front of me. But now my eyes were open, and I couldn't unsee the truth anymore. 2 weeks passed in a strange, suspended state. I continued staying with Eleanor, attending my therapy sessions with Dr. Levine, and slowly piecing together the fragments of the independent woman I'd once been. I turned my phone back on but screened all calls. Nathan's messages grew increasingly desperate, then threatening, then desperate again. A cycle Dr. Levine had warned me to expect. He's looking for the approach that will work on you, she explained during our third session. He's cycling through tactics, trying to find your weakness. The realization that my own son viewed me as a puzzle to be solved, a resource to be mined, sent a cold weight to the pit of my stomach. How did I not see this? I asked more to myself than to her. Love creates blind spots, Dr. Levine said simply. Especially a mother's love. I nodded, remembering how I defended Nathan to everyone, to Eleanor, to my sister Jane who lived across the country, even to Michael before he died. Michael, who had seen the warning signs long before I had. Nathan's taking advantage of you, he'd said during one of his final lucid days in hospice. Promise me you'll set boundaries after I'm gone. I'd promised, then promptly broken that promise the moment Nathan showed up at my door 3 days after the funeral, teary-eyed and talking about overdue rent. A knock at Eleanor's door on Saturday afternoon jolted me from these reflections. Eleanor was at her book club, and I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole I saw Nathan and Mia standing on the porch. My heart raced. Despite 2 weeks of therapy and endless conversations with Eleanor, I wasn't ready for this confrontation. I considered not answering, but Nathan had clearly seen movement through the window. He knocked again, harder. Mom, I know you're in there. Please open up. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door but remained in the doorway, blocking entry. Hello, Nathan. Mia. Nathan looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. Mia stood slightly behind him, her expression carefully arranged into one of concern. Mom, Nathan's voice broke. Can we come in? Please. This isn't my house, I said. I'm a guest here. Then can we go somewhere to talk? I've been worried sick about you. I studied his face, trying to see my little boy in this man's desperate eyes. You can say whatever you need to say right here. Nathan's expression flickered, momentarily revealing frustration before settling back into contrition. I came to apologize. What I said was unforgivable. I didn't mean it, I was just stressed and took it out on you. You know I would never want to hurt you. The words were right, but something in his delivery felt rehearsed, hollow. Thank you for the apology, I said, keeping my voice neutral. There was an awkward pause as Nathan clearly expected more. Forgiveness, perhaps, or an invitation to come in. That's it, he finally asked. 2 weeks of silence and that's all you have to say? I felt Mia tense beside him, ready to intervene if he lost his temper. Nathan, I said calmly, I accept your apology but I need space right now. Space? His voice rose. Since when do you need space from your own son? This isn't like you, Mom. First you walk out, then you ignore my calls, now you're talking about space? What's next? You'll cut me out of your will too. And there it was, the rapid pivot from apology to accusation, the subtle reference to money. Dr. Levine had predicted this exact pattern. "I think we should talk another time when you're calmer," I said, starting to close the door. Nathan's hand shot out, preventing the door from closing. "This is because of Eleanor, isn't it? She's always hated me. Always been jealous of our relationship." "Take your hand off the door, Nathan." "Mom, please, we need to talk about the condo. The property tax bill came and—" "So that's why you're really here," I said quietly. "Not to check on my well-being, but because a bill arrived." Nathan's face flushed. "That's not fair. I came to apologize, to make things right between us. And to get me to pay your property taxes." Mia stepped forward, placing a hand on Nathan's arm. "Barbara, you know how much Nathan loves you. We're just going through a difficult time financially, and—" "We're always going through a difficult time financially," I interrupted, surprising myself with my directness. "That's been the constant refrain for 20 years. So now you're keeping score?" Nathan's voice turned cold. "Counting every penny you've ever given me?" "Actually, yes," I admitted. "Dr. Levine suggested I make a list." "Who the hell is Dr. Levine?" "My therapist." Nathan's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. "You're seeing a therapist? And talking about me? Jesus, Mom, that's private family business." "It's my life, Nathan. And I'm trying to understand why I've allowed myself to be treated this way for so long." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Allowed yourself? You're my mother. Helping me isn't some burden. It's what mothers do." I took a deep breath. "Not like this. Not to this extent. Not at the expense of their own well-being." Mia's sweet facade cracked slightly. "This is ridiculous. We came here to make peace, and you're treating us like we're criminals." "I don't think you're criminals," I said evenly. "I think you're two adults who need to take responsibility for yourselves." Nathan's face hardened. "So that's it? After everything, you're just cutting us off? What kind of mother does that?" The question hung in the air between us. 6 months ago, it would have devastated me, sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. Now I recognized it for what it was, a last-ditch attempt to regain, the kind who has finally realized her own worth. I answered quietly. "Goodbye, Nathan." "Mia." I closed the door firmly and leaned against it, listening to Nathan's angry protests gradually fade as they retreated to their car. Through the window I watched them drive away, Nathan gesturing wildly as Mia stared straight ahead. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. For the first time in years I had stood my ground. I had spoken my truth, and somehow I was still standing. The house phone rang, startling me. It was Eleanor. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "Nathan just blew past me on the street looking like he wanted to murder someone." "Everything's fine," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. "Actually, everything's better than fine." "You're really doing this?" Eleanor asked, watching me sign the listing agreement for my house. 3 months had passed since Nathan's confrontation on Eleanor's doorstep. 3 months of therapy, of gradual healing, of tentative steps toward independence. Now, sitting in my real estate agent's office, I was taking the biggest step yet. "I'm really doing this," I confirmed, sliding the papers back to Sarah, my realtor. The 4-bedroom colonial where Michael and I had raised Nathan, where I'd lived alone since Michael's death, had become a mausoleum of memories, some cherished, others painful. It was too big for one person, too expensive to maintain, and too full of ghosts. "We should have it on the market by next week," Sarah said, tucking the papers into a folder. "With the current demand in this neighborhood, I expect it'll sell quickly." "And you're sure about the condo?" Eleanor asked as we walked to her car. I nodded. "The Lakeview building is perfect, single level, close to downtown, excellent security." I hesitated. "And Nathan doesn't know about it." That was key. In the past 3 months, Nathan had cycled through every manipulation tactic imaginable. He'd shown up at my therapy appointments. He'd sent me his parents to plead his case. He'd even tried using my 8-year-old grandson Tyler as emotional leverage, coaching the boy to call and say he missed his grandma. That last tactic had nearly broken me. I adored Tyler, the one pure joy in this mess. But Dr. Levine had helped me see that allowing Nathan to use Tyler as a pawn would only perpetuate the unhealthy dynamic. You can have a relationship with Tyler without enabling Nathan, she'd explained. It just needs to be on your terms with clear boundaries. That advice had led to my new Sunday routine, taking Tyler to the Children's Museum while Mia went to her yoga class. Nathan wasn't part of these outings, which had initially enraged him but eventually led to a fragile détente. I have something else to tell you, I said to Eleanor as we drove home. I've decided to join that senior travel group you mentioned, the one going to Italy in October. Eleanor nearly swerved off the road. Barbara Harrison, are you serious? You've been talking about seeing Italy since college. I smiled, feeling a flutter of excitement. I figure it's now or never. Michael always said we'd go when he retired, but... I trailed off, the familiar pang of grief softened by time but still present. He would be so proud of you, Eleanor said quietly. You know that, right? I nodded, blinking back tears. I think he would. When we got back to Eleanor's house, where I'd continued staying while preparing to sell my home, there was a package on the porch. No return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. It's from Nathan, I said, picking it up warily. Eleanor frowned. Do you want me to open it? I considered this, then shook my head. No, I need to handle this myself. Inside, I carefully opened the package. It contained a small wooden box I recognized immediately. Michael's jewelry box, which had gone missing during my hasty exit from home 3 months ago. I opened it gingerly, half expecting it to be empty. But there was Michael's watch, his cufflinks, the tie pin his father had given him. And beneath them, a handwritten note from Nathan. Mom, I found these while looking for some documents. I know how much Dad's things mean to you. I'm trying to understand why you've pulled away from me. Maybe someday we can talk again. Nathan. I sat heavily on the couch, the box clutched in my hands. This wasn't the angry, entitled Nathan of recent months. This message carried a hint of the son I remembered, the one who could be thoughtful, who wasn't completely lost to manipulation and entitlement. I showed the note to Eleanor. Progress? She asked cautiously. Maybe, I said. Or maybe just a new tactic. I called Dr. Levine and explained the situation. How do you feel about it? She asked. Confused, I admitted. Part of me wants to see this as a genuine olive branch, but another part wonders if I'm just being naive again. Both reactions are valid, she said. The important question is, what do you want to do about it? That was the new refrain in my life. What did I want? After decades of prioritizing Nathan's needs, my own had become so buried I could barely identify them. I want to acknowledge his gesture without falling back into old patterns, I said slowly. That sounds very healthy. How will you do that? I thought for a moment. I'll send a thank you note. Simple, appreciative, but not overly emotional. Excellent boundaries, Dr. Levine approved. That evening I wrote a brief note thanking Nathan for returning Michael's things, signed it simply Mom, and mailed it the next day. A week passed without response. Then, as I was boxing up books in my soon-to-be-sold house, my phone rang with Nathan's number. Hello. I answered cautiously. Mom. His voice sounded strained. I got your note. Thank you again for sending Michael's things, I said, keeping my tone pleasant but neutral. A pause. Tyler keeps asking when you're coming back home. The subtle manipulation wasn't lost on me. I see him every Sunday, Nathan. We're going to the dinosaur exhibit this weekend. Another pause. Mia told me. He enjoys those outings. I do too, I said, waiting for the inevitable turn in conversation. Came right on cue. Mom, about the condo. Nathan, I interrupted gently. I'm not discussing financial matters today. But the property taxes. No, Nathan. For once he didn't explode or try another angle. Instead, he fell silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. Is this permanent? He finally asked, his voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. The question caught me off guard. Was it? Was I really going to stop supporting my only child after all these years? The financial assistance, yes, I said carefully. That part is permanent. But our relationship doesn't have to be defined by money. Nathan. I don't know how to have a relationship with you that isn't like it was, he admitted. It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. I don't either, I confessed. But I'm willing to try if you are. After we hung up, I sat amid the half-packed boxes of my old life, feeling strangely light. For the first time, Nathan and I had spoken to each other as adults. Not as a provider and recipient, not as rescuer and victim, but as two people acknowledging a difficult truth. It wasn't reconciliation, not yet. But it was a start. The Italian sun warmed my face as I sat at a small cafe in Florence, watching people stream past the Duomo. I'd been in Italy for 2 weeks with Eleanor and the senior travel group, fulfilling the dream Michael and I had put off for so many years. Another espresso? Eleanor asked, returning from inside the cafe. Why not? I smiled. We're on vacation. She settled into the chair beside me, studying my face. You look different, Barbara. Lighter somehow. I feel different, I admitted. For the first time in years, I'm just living. Not waiting for the next crisis, not walking on eggshells, not checking my bank account in dread. It had been a year since that Sunday morning when Nathan had said those unforgivable words. A year of therapy, of setting boundaries, of rediscovering myself. My house had sold quickly, as Sarah predicted, and I'd moved into my sun-filled condo downtown. I'd joined a painting class, reconnected with old friends, and even started volunteering at the local literacy program. Nathan and I had established a fragile new relationship. We weren't close, perhaps we never would be again, but we were civil. He'd finally started addressing his own issues, joining a support group for gambling addiction after Mia threatened divorce. Whether this change was permanent remained to be seen, but it was something. I still saw Tyler every Sunday, our museum visits now expanded to include the zoo, the aquarium, and occasionally a pizza lunch. These outings were the highlight of my week, a reminder that love could be uncomplicated. My phone buzzed with a text message. Despite being thousands of miles away, I still checked it reflexively. Old habits died hard. It was from Nathan. Property tax bill arrived. Paid it myself. Thought you should know. I showed the message to Eleanor, who raised an eyebrow. Well, that's new. Progress, I agreed, tucking the phone away without responding. 3 days later, as our tour group prepared to leave Florence for Venice, my phone rang with Nathan's number. Stepping away from the group, I answered. Mom? Are you there? His voice sounded strange, urgent. I'm here, Nathan. Everything okay? Not really. Mia left. She took Tyler and went to stay with her parents. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I'm sorry to hear that. What happened? What do you think happened? Money. Always money. He gave a bitter laugh. I lost my job last month. Didn't tell you because, well, you know, because he knew I wouldn't bail him out anymore. I see, I said carefully. And Mia? She says she's tired of the instability. Tired of always being on the edge financially. Can you believe that? After everything we've been through together. I could, in fact, believe it. Mia was many things, not all of them pleasant, but she'd always been clear about wanting financial security. What will you do now? I asked. There was a long pause. I don't know, Mom. I really don't. For the first time, I can't see a way out. 6 months ago, those words would have sent me scrambling to fix everything, to ease his pain, to make it all better. Now, I recognize them as part of Nathan's journey, a necessary reckoning. You'll figure it out, I said, my tone gentle but firm. You're resourceful, Nathan. You always have been. Mom, he stopped and I heard him take a shaky breath. I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. My grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. I'm sorry. For everything. Not just what I said that day, but everything. The money, the manipulation, the guilt trips. I see it now. I didn't before, or maybe I didn't want to, but I do now. I stood very still, absorbing his words. They were the words I'd wanted to hear for so long. Yet now that they'd been spoken, I found myself unsure how to respond. Are you still there? He asked when I didn't reply. I'm here, I said softly. Thank you for saying that, Nathan. It means a lot. I don't expect you to forgive me, he continued. I wouldn't in your shoes. But I wanted you to know that I understand now, at least a little, what I put you through. I watched an elderly Italian couple walk arm in arm past the hotel, leaning on each other with the easy comfort of decades together. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Nathan. It's a process. For both of us. When I hung up, Eleanor was waiting nearby, concern written on her face. Everything okay? I nodded slowly. I think it might be, eventually. 2 weeks later, I returned home to find my condo exactly as I'd left it. Peaceful, orderly mine. There was a small package in my mailbox. Inside was a framed photograph of Tyler at the zoo from one of our Sunday outings, his gap-toothed smile radiant as he pointed at the elephants. The note with it read, "He misses you. We're staying at a hotel near Mom's place. If you're willing, he'd love to keep your Sunday tradition. Nathan." I traced Tyler's smile with my finger, then picked up my phone. "Tyler would love to see the new dinosaur exhibit this Sunday," I texted Nathan. 1 p.m. at the museum entrance? His reply came quickly. "We'll be there." When Sunday arrived, I spotted them immediately. Tyler bouncing with excitement, Nathan standing slightly apart, uncertainty written in every line of his body. Tyler ran to me for a hug, chattering about dinosaurs in school and his new sneakers. "Hi, Mom," Nathan said quietly when Tyler paused for breath. "Hello, Nathan," I replied, meeting his eyes. "You look well." He didn't actually. He looked tired, somewhat thinner, the strain of recent events evident on his face. But he'd shown up, sober and on time, which was something. "Can Tyler and I treat you to lunch after the exhibit?" he asked, his tone careful, as if expecting rejection. "Nothing fancy, just the cafe here." I considered this. It wasn't part of our usual routine, and part of me, the cautious part that Dr. Levine had helped nurture, wondered if this was the first step back into old patterns. But another part, the part that remembered the little boy who had once held my hand tightly while crossing the street, wanted to leave the door open just a crack. "That would be nice," I said finally. "Thank you." The 3 hours that followed were pleasant. Not perfect. Not without awkward moments, but pleasant. Tyler dominated the conversation, which made things easier. Nathan didn't mention money once, didn't hint at hardship, didn't try to make me feel guilty for enjoying my retirement. As we said goodbye in the museum parking lot, Nathan hesitated, then spoke. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I really am sorry, Mom. For everything." I looked at my son, flawed, struggling, but trying. For the first time in years, I could see glimmers of the person he could be, if he continued this path. "I know, Nathan," I said softly. "I believe you." As I drove home to my peaceful condo, I reflected on the long journey of the past year. I had lost the illusion of a perfect family, but gained something more valuable. Self-respect, boundaries, the freedom to live on my own terms. I was not the same woman who had stood frozen in Nathan's kitchen a year ago, devastated by his cruel words. That Barbara had believed her worth lay solely in what she could give to others. This Barbara knew better. My phone chimed with a message from Eleanor. "How was the museum?" "Surprisingly okay," I replied. "Small steps." "Are you coming to painting class tomorrow?" "Wouldn't miss it," I texted back. "I'm starting a new canvas." And I was. In more ways than one.